Which blockchain was the best for 2024? What were our biggest wins and losses? We cover all this right now in the Collective Shift Weekly Recap, a special episode today where we'll be covering our takes for the year that was in crypto. So excited to get into it. We'll be going over blockchain of the year, highlight of the year, biggest win, biggest loss of the year, our biggest lessons of the year, most unexpected event, crypto app of the year, and finishing off with a project we're really keen on for 2025. So yeah, Nick, a few awards to get to, and I'm excited to crack into it.
A few things happened this year in the crypto market, surprisingly. Absolutely jam-packed year. I don't know about you, Matt, but this was probably the most action-packed year I've really been involved in the crypto ecosystem. I've been kind of following the space now, especially deep since 2020. And then before that, kind of on the fringes as a bit of a novice and learning the ropes. But, this far outpaced 2020, in my opinion, just in terms of fundamental, things that move the needle and really change the crypto market for the better, not just driven by pure speculation, but tangible things like institutions getting involved and whatnot. But we won't spill the beans too much already. Where do you want to get started here, Matt?
Yeah, we'll go blockchain of the year. So as you said, dozens of blockchains this year, and actually starting to creep into actual use cases by traditional finance or other institutions, and who knows, even regulatory sort of environments now seemingly going to become a lot more favorable. So it's always big blockchains. They underpin the whole crypto space, of course. But when we look back at 2024, Nick, what was the blockchain that really was a cut above the rest in 2024?
My call out here is for Solana, because I've been really convicted in Solana since that FTX bottom, and I was really impressed to see the amount of volume, applications, the ecosystem development, and this all translated to solid on-chain metrics. So last year, I did post to members throughout 2023 reasons why Solana, is not dead, why people should still be paying attention to it. My main actual analysis was that, hey, the fundamentals hadn't caught up to it yet, but we're still seeing a lot of interest in the ecosystem itself. But 2024 was the year where on-chain fundamentals have caught up to price, and they both rocketed higher throughout the year. So hard to go past Solana, to be honest, because they were the best performer really in terms of layer one blockchains. And I don't think it's just a passing fad here for Solana, but they got Financer coming out in 2025. So I'm really expecting a lot more good stuff, on the horizon for them, and was really surprised by the, level of professionalism and development that happened at Breakpoint, which is probably one of we don't have this segment, but the best crypto event of 2024. From what I heard from a lot of people who went, wasn't able to go, but you know what? Hopefully next year I'll be able to go to Dubai.
Yeah, for sure. The blockchain for me that, really stood out. I do agree Solana had a really strong year. But another one that really stood out for me was Base. So a layer 2, blockchain on top of Ethereum, launched in August of last year, or July or August. And really sort of grew into itself, I think, this year, and gained a lot of momentum, driven of course by Coinbase, really like leading the charge there. And several other teams that are now becoming sort of pillars of the actual Base ecosystem. I think at the start of the year, we really saw Farcaster and Warpcast really, driving Base activity. And then over time, we saw, things like meme coins and even just social applications, and various DeFi use cases on top of Base. Aerodrome, another standout on the Base ecosystem this year. But overall, I would say 2024, you would look back and remember that as a year that Solana, to your point, really solidified itself and was well back in the picture, to put it one way. And it was also the arrival of Base, which really is carrying significant momentum heading into next year. All their metrics are at all-time highs, which, again, it's a very young chain, relatively speaking, but all the metrics ticking up in the right direction. And even just overall developer enthusiasm or developer adoption, the amount of projects, expanding to launch a version of their product on Base, or even to migrate entirely to Base. And now with the US election outcome in November, with Trump, being being the winner of the election and Coinbase's influence on different initiatives and funding that goes on in the US politics, I would expect Base to, again, really just be at the forefront of adoption, landing a lot of big, traditional clients next year, I would expect. So yeah, I would think Base would be my nomination for blockchain of the year.
Base is really cool. I think started a nice trend there too. Kraken has just launched their own L2. So who knows, maybe the success of Base is really going to incentivize a lot of these other exchanges to continue deploying their own chains on things like Ethereum there. What about highlight of the year here, Matt? This is the next big award we have. Any big shout outs for you that really took you by surprise? The one thing that really stood out to you this year?
Yeah, I had to think about this, and I think the highlight for me was around the US election, but in particular, I think was the Polymarket, being used significantly by mainstream news and just people in general who wanted to see what the, likelihood of Harris winning or Trump winning was. Like, it slowly became, heavily cited and referenced. For those unaware, Polymarket is really just a betting agency, a prediction market, more specifically, that sort of utilizes, blockchain. And yeah, it actually sort of was one example, a rare example of a crypto application sort of, seeping into mainstream. And I guess why it was a highlight of my year is because it was first, from my understanding, the first sort of prediction market to really indicate that Trump was really significantly gaining momentum on election day itself. It was extremely helpful for, analysts such as myself to be able to just reference Polymarket to see, what the likelihood of Trump winning was, because it was the first to react to any votes that were coming in. Why was it the first to react? Because there was money at stake, a lot of money at stake to be correct in predicting who was going to win the election. So, the election outcome was fantastic, and Polymarket being a major, I suppose, reference point for a lot of people around the world for the accuracy or the likelihood of who was winning, was a big highlight for me, after years of not seeing many breakthrough apps in this space.
It's a similar vibe I had, to be honest there, Matt. Like, super excited to see these applications be talked about on things like CNBC, on Bloomberg, on these mainstream media, news websites. Everyone talking about referencing Polymarket, and a lot of people, to be honest, didn't even know it was a crypto app. They just saw it was a good app. They saw that it was gaining a lot of usage. And, that's probably the dream for me for a lot of this stuff, is that you don't even realize that you're using things that are underpinning blockchain. You're just using good applications and good services without even knowing what's underneath. So yeah, good shout out there, Matt. For me, hard to go past the election and 100K Bitcoin. It'd be insane to have a highlight of the year without mentioning these two things, which, can't underestimate enough how important the election was for crypto and to get a pro crypto government in the US. I don't think it's an understatement to say that they've never had a more pro crypto government. So that's a huge thing that just can't be underestimated enough. And we're already seeing the impacts of it with more people launching projects that we probably may not have seen if maybe Kamala Harris and the Democrats did win that election. Being kind of greedy here, Matt, because I got a third shout out here, which is BlackRock. Everyone loves to maybe get a bit spooked out by BlackRock entering the space, but I just think it's a completely net positive. And not only did they enter the space in a big way with, the Bitcoin and then Ethereum ETFs that they launched at the start of the year, but then they are actually deploying and created on-chain funds. So they had their build fund, which quickly, I think, became one of the biggest, real-world tokenized, funds on chain in about 100 or so days since they, went live. And then we saw it to end the year that they're recommending, I think, a 2% allocation to those investors who are comfortable taking on that certain amount of risk. So we got, BlackRock ETFs, we got them publicly building on public blockchains such as Ethereum, and then they deployed to 5 other blockchains. And now they're, talking about a 2% allocation to Bitcoin, up from their probably previous 1%. So, insane year when you're thinking about that all happened for BlackRock just in 2024.
Yeah, it's really hard to believe, and no, you phrased it really well there, Nick. A lot of people know the Bitcoin sort of bull case that BlackRock has been sort of peddling and things like that, but the other aspects of their adoption of blockchain is very not widely known for sure, and I think will only become more apparent heading into next year. In terms of what was our biggest win of the year, you can sort of take this in whichever way you like. Was there anything in 2024 that you were quite proud of, or a win that you had?
To my mind, the first was Bitcoin's perfect storm. So this was a post that I did, I think at the end of last year, did a lot of hard work covering the ETF anticipation, even back in July. Trying to tell members that, hey, this ETF probably isn't as priced in as people think, and that's probably not going to be a sell the news, and the impacts are long lasting rather than, some, mundane, obvious sell the news event. And this was really, the backbone of my post, looking at those core narratives, and that I really felt Bitcoin was entering this perfect storm heading into 2024, which really proved true. Maybe also for reasons that I didn't anticipate, didn't anticipate Trump becoming so crypto focused. That definitely helped that perfect storm, get going and that 100K price rise. But then we saw, likes of ETF far I think outperform even our own expectations, and they all hit the high end of the benchmarks that I was setting when we were getting this analysis going. Probably the second one, to be honest here, Matt, was the Solana outlook that I was really happy to see. So I mentioned earlier that I did a lot of extensive analysis on Solana in 2023. And then in early Jan 2024, I kind of did a post, is Solana running out of steam? In this post, I came to the conclusion that, hey, it's definitely not. There's still a long way to go for Solana in the market. And it turned out Solana, 2024 was one of Solana's best years at continuing that growth that we saw in late 2023. So really excited to see those pan out. Always good to see the wins, and no doubt we'll get into some of the losses in a follow award there, Matt. But how about you for your highlight and biggest?
Yeah, for me, it was really being that voice of reason in a sense in Q3, when it was really looking quite grim for a while there. We had our just getting on my screen here, the post itself. I told members, just stick through it, survive Q3, thrive in Q4. If you remember, we had the Bitcoin ETF launch, fantastic in January. We had the halving that was sort of considered an upcoming catalyst. So when that came and went, after April the 20th, when it was on, I remember the outlook like just not being that great in the short term for Bitcoin and, crypto more broadly. And we saw it was a pretty tough winter, or at least Southern Hemisphere winter for crypto investors. Altcoins really are just hemorrhaging value against US dollar as well as Bitcoin. And even Q3 was pretty tough going, even though Bitcoin itself was hanging in there. And Bitcoin dominance was just climbing and being up only throughout the year. I'm really glad that I was able to maintain my bullish outlook for this bull market. I was still not shaken in the sense of thinking this bull market will actually come to fruition. Thankfully it has. And obviously, the Trump winning, which back then was, not super likely. That also was something that was really, I guess I'm glad that I stuck through with. So for everyone who, held strong throughout Q2 and Q3, well done, because it was tough going for a lot of people, who were particularly either frustrated that they had like majority of their holdings in altcoins. Maybe they missed out on Bitcoin, missed out on Solana, and weren't in any meme coins. I know quite a few people who didn't really have any of those. So it was a very hard 2024 for a lot of crypto investors, even though we're sort of celebrating all-time highs. But Q4 has been, really, really exciting. And yeah, I'm really keen to see what next year holds. So yeah, I was happy with that post in particular.
Hard to forget that also happens at a time when we had Germany that was probably selling their Bitcoin and triggering a bit of panic in the market. Wasn't Mount Gox? Was that? Yeah, that would have been a similar period too. So we had a lot of big FUD events happen on the space. So a lot of people taken out when they're seeing governments selling their Bitcoin, or all these concerns about Mount Gox going to dump on the market and, really send the Bitcoin price tumbling. So great to see we, stand with a bit of reason there, and, it's probably hindsight. It seems so obvious that, just get through that event, but it's not so easy for everyone. You see some of those FUD news headlines that, make their way around circles in the space.
Yeah, for sure. The Japanese yen collapse, or that freaked out a lot of people. And I think it was late July, early August from memory. That was also around the same time. So it always tests you this market in crypto, but always a lot of high rewards for those who stay in long enough, historically speaking. But what have we got next?
Got the next award here. We got biggest lesson of the year, or actually biggest loss of the year. Jumping the gun a bit there. So I'm not sure if you want to take this one, Matt, or I'll go first.
Yeah, you head off. Yeah.
All right, cool. My one was crypto gaming and probably Illuvium. So crypto gaming was something I was watching quite closely, following the likes of Immutable, the IMX token, following Illuvium, ILV. Illuvium finally brought to market their games, but they really didn't see the level of growth and new player adoption that they would have hoped. And the games are still continuing to not remain idle, but just kind of being played by the same vested interests and people that had been following the game all these years. It didn't really get any net new players that I really saw, and the games themselves really struggled to gain attention, and so did then the NFTs and the tokens themselves in the market. So kind of a bigger comment too on crypto gaming. That was the biggest maybe loss, that I, learned a lot from. Crypto gaming is really difficult. It's still, to me, unproven of whether it actually offers an alternative, benefit using blockchain and NFT based stuff. I'm still a big fan of NFTs in games because I still think they represent a sort of digital property rights that, traditional games don't have. That's really important. But maybe it's the game economics themselves that I'm still even trying to make my way around it. And is this something that's viable? Because it just creates so much, alternative motives and vested interest and warps incentives when the games just want to be fun to play. But when you have people that try to monopolize the game and take advantage of that for monetary gain, it can kind of make them not fun. And one that I also recently was thinking about, Matt, was the idea of losing, your keys and your stuff. Because traditional games, if you get locked out of your account, the game developers just can go in, it's in a database, so they can just flip the switch and give you back your gold or your, in-game items. In the crypto space, though, if you don't have the right, development in there, you can't actually reverse these transactions, unless maybe you're on like an L2 or some other different permission system that's built on top. So there's a lot of lessons there and a big loss for crypto gaming. Hopefully we can start to see them, ride the wave and come out of 2025 stronger than ever. But it's one that I'm, not taking for granted anymore.
Yeah, well said. It was a very ambitious, sector in its use case. Still could happen, but with being so ambitious, it always had the high likelihood of failing, but doesn't mean they shouldn't have tried for sure. And, getting up Artemis here, or Artemis Analytics, we've got year to date, or the last 12 months, sector performance, gaming, down 23%, over the past 12 months, so, there's a few of them, a few sectors that are worse than gaming, but of course, just holding Bitcoin, which was more than double. So 115% gain, in the last year. But the biggest loss for me was an easy one. I wish it wasn't as easy of a pick, but it was certainly, Maker. I got quite excited. I've always liked Maker as a project, but never been interested in investing in the MKR token, just because I knew that it wasn't it's not a retail friendly token in terms of it's got the opposite of unit bias. Like, it's perceived as too expensive, which again, in bull markets, so simple logic can really be effective. And historically it's proven true with Maker. I also didn't like it historically because it was DeFi, and DeFi governance tokens had always just been so hampered by regulations and whatnot. But I finally decided to jump ahead and invest in Maker this year. Around April, I knew that the market didn't really know anything about Endgame, a multi-phase sort of plan for Maker to rebrand and ultimately ending up on becoming its own blockchain, which is still very much a long time down the road. And I knew the market didn't really know that, and I thought I could take advantage of that information asymmetry, even though it's all public info. And I was really excited about the outlook for Maker, but I overlooked just ultimately, like, just the confusion of the whole rebrand itself was extremely confusing. And I, deep down, I think looking back, like, knew that, but I decided to sort of overlook it, thinking that, the outlook for Endgame was just so great. And that there were so many other reasons why I thought value was going to accrue to the MKR or Sky tokens, that I thought that confusing element of the rebrand was just going to be temporary. But it was definitely a problem, for people. And the problem was so big that it wasn't able to actually get any momentum after those short-term challenges. So the rebranding here, the big lesson for me, because it was a loss, I think the big takeaway for me, I'm still holding MKR, and I still do expect it to do well next year now that we've had the change of, president in the US coming up, and DeFi not expected to be as negative. But the big lesson there for me was just not to, when something is confusing for your average crypto investor, like, that says a lot, and you should just, like, lean into that more. And more of an individual case for Maker here is because they had an optional upgrade or optional migration of the token, for exchanges, which in many cases that's people's only interaction with crypto, for better or worse. Because it was an optional upgrade, there really wasn't any incentive for exchanges to support the upgrade. Like, it would have cost the exchanges a lot of money to, like, put their staff or team members, their developers, like, in charge of, making sure tokens were being able to migrate, like, one way. Like, it was just very confusing, and no incentive for exchanges to support. I can't remember any exchanges supporting the migration. I'm sure there were probably one or two, maybe three, mid-tier ones around the world, but it was, so for any MKR holders that had their Maker on SwiftX or CoinSpot or any other exchange, it was on them. The onus was on them to go ahead and set up a MetaMask wallet or something and get it on chain, and then go and upgrade it yourself to Sky, which for many people, that was just already too much of an ask, which is understandable. So just not paying much respect to that, or not considering deeply enough, I guess, why the whole exchange support thing, that really was why I lost so badly, I think, on Maker, while I kept watching Bitcoin go up in price.
It's always a tough one when you're maybe, you can keep it simple really and just pay more attention to Bitcoin. And I think that's a lot of people's, lesson to after cycle is not to fade Bitcoin's strength, because that can be the really simple IQ play. You just put your money in Bitcoin and sleep a bit easier at night. You don't have to overthink the market. So, maybe I'm jumping the gun on biggest lesson, because we've got some more lessons here, Matt, on our next big award. Because my biggest lesson probably of the year, shout out to XRP and the Dino coin rally. So Dino coins is, kind of a term that's used in crypto circles to refer to dinosaur coins, which are these older cryptocurrencies that, had already got their all-time high in previous cycles and gained attention, but then come back and rally, even though they may not have as much development, attention, or upgrades, on them, but they still outperform and see a big surge higher. So, XRP was one of the biggest winners out of the election, but then we saw a lot of other cryptocurrencies that led me to believe that, hey, that XRP rally is not just exclusive to itself, but there's a bigger story that's going on, which are these Dino coins, such as, 2017 coins like Cardano, like Stellar, Polkadot, VeChain, even things like EOS. EOS went up about 250%. And another 2017 coin, IOTA, was used to try and create an Internet of Things coin. That was the big it kid and narrative of 2017. That went up 430%. So performed very similarly to XRP, even though I'd have no idea what IOTA are doing these days, or, anyone that really uses it as a network. But, it makes you believe that, hey, a lot of retail who had these coins, they really start to come back in waves. And that's their first point of call in bull markets, is they look at the coins they used to have, probably double down on them, kind of get excited about them again, shill them a bit more, and then they try and see them rally. So don't underestimate the Dino coin, rally. To be honest, that was a bit of a lesson for me in the last couple of months.
Yeah, really good. Well put there, Nick. And we'll see, what the future holds for these particular altcoins. For me, the biggest lesson there was, it's always a challenge, working this space, in a sense, being, tapped into every new sort of meta that's coming out, it can always be challenging to, you always see a lot of things at the ground level, and then sort of lament, not getting in on them earlier. Hindsight's 2020. You sort of just learn to deal with it in this working in this space. But I think one of my biggest lessons, which, even in saying that, I think the lesson for me was putting time aside for following up on things that I found interesting. So let's just say you're doing 5 hours of research and you just sort of, bookmarking things and like noting things down. Oh, probably not 5. Let's just say 2 hours. Yeah, you're bookmarking things. I mean, that's interesting. I'll look into that later. You got a 2-hour block of time and you just sort of writing down some notes, saving things, which is what I do a lot of as part of my job anyway. I think ultimately, like, I strongly believe in a bull market in particular, like, that time can be better spent maybe if you got a 2-hour block doing, say, 60 to 90 minutes of that sort of, bookmarking, taking notes, things like that. And then actually spending that other 30 to 45 minutes actually like spending time and thinking, and actually just like just taking the notes that you already have and just like actually analyzing them and spending time consuming the things that you are finding interesting. Because in an environment like this, you will just keep finding things that chasing your curiosity. But if you're not investing based on any of that information, if that's what you're interested in crypto, you'll end up just finding all these gems, but never doing anything about it. So in crypto, it's always a challenge. You're never going to get everyone. I think that is always a lesson that people have to learn multiple times, like including myself over the years. Sometimes it can be tough to see things, rallying when you saw them at the ground level, but just never got them back. The reason I put this in here is because, Fartcoin was the one that did it for me recently, where I saw it on like the day it launched. It was about $30,000 like market cap. And I bookmarked it. I saw someone tweet, an account I really like, tweet about it. I thought, oh, that's pretty funny. Like this AI GOAT terminal or True Terminal is like, has talked about this token. Back then, all these lessons I've learned over the years have taught me never to invest in derivatives. I was of the opinion back then, hey, I'm just buying GOAT now. And I'm glad I did. I did pretty well off seeing that. And I was like, hey, just focus on GOAT. Don't get distracted by derivatives, which historically are just terrible investments. But I think it was, again, seeing Fartcoin come up again and again as it crept higher and ended up sort of breaking out of a derivative play to GOAT. It actually sort of just became a meme coin in and of itself. And I sort of just ignored that. And after seeing things come up multiple times, I think a big lesson for anyone listening or watching right now is if you see things come up multiple times in bull markets in particular, that tends to be like a really strong signal just to go ahead and just look up what is this thing people are talking about, or try a different application if people keep talking about it. Because you can, potentially have, experiences or read something that changes your whole perspective on, the outlook for the market or a certain investment that you either hold or maybe you learn about. So that's my biggest advice there. So after seeing, Fartcoin go up, it was about 35,000x or 40,000x when I calculated it. That was like particularly painful, but like that's part of the nature of working in this space. And you'll keep seeing things come up this bull market. Hopefully, you hit even just one of those things, in your time, and you'll be, more than happy. But that's the biggest lesson of the year in a year that was ultimately like really positive. There's always things you keep learning, but in terms of the unexpected, elements of this year, there's always unexpected events. If you talk about 2024, Nick, what was the most unexpected thing that happened for you in crypto?
Me, it has to go to Trump's DeFi project, World Liability Financial, that he's advising and the Trump family are actively advisors on. If you had told me earlier in the year that, Donald Trump, ex-president, soon to be a president-elect, would be advising a DeFi project and putting his name to it, I would have actually thought it was fake news, absolutely insane. I had 0% chance of this happening this year. Like, I can't understand how much I did not anticipate this. It was so unexpected. Even less so the BTC strategic reserve talk. Wasn't anticipating that. maybe even to heat up as much as it did in terms of, people coming out, even a few lawmakers from different states in the US really put pressure on this. But, Trump DeFi project had no idea that was even going to come close, to happening, especially considering that Donald Trump was actively, anti-cryptocurrencies back in 2019, when he had his, first real big public comments about the industry, which were all negative. And so he's obviously taking that opportunistic, advantage of the harsh, enforcement and hostility going on from the Democrats in the US, to take advantage of this and start to lean into the crypto crowd, especially ahead of that November election. But no idea the Trump project would even get off the ground, let alone be, even raise as much as it did, to be honest. So wild year to know that Trump is, and is actively advising a DeFi project. And in January 20, you're going to have a sitting president that is advising a DeFi project. So absolutely insane.
Yeah. When you put it like that, it certainly is. And yeah, that was a great pick. For me, the biggest surprise was just the rise of meme coins. Not so much that it happened, just the magnitude of the run. So, of course, this time last year, we were talking about things like Dog With Hat and, other things. Pepe came out around April or May in 2023. And we're like, okay, meme coins, like a Dogecoin have been around for ages. Like, okay, I guess like Pepe, you can join as well. But it wasn't until Dog With Hat came out, but it was a bit more clear that meme coins were going to be a part in 2024, but I was shocked by the magnitude of the growth for meme coins. The chart I always like to show members is just this time last year, this is from October, but I've even done the calculations recently. In even November 2023, we had 4 meme coins in the top 200 by market cap. So that was Doge, Shiba, Pepe, and Floki. And now in November, I haven't checked recently, but even in November, we had 25 meme coins in the top 200 by market cap. So, it's like about a 5x jump for just in 12 months time. That gives you just a sense of just how crazy the growth has been. And even all those mid cap sort of meme coins that are probably ranked 300 to 500 by market cap, there's been a proliferation of those. So I think it's hard to know where they go from here, right? Like, I think it's pretty well known. I think you have a hard time arguing that. I think most people agree that a lot of the meme coins will drop by 99% after the bull market's over. But yeah, I'm interested to see sort of how many of these sort of stay in the top 100 or 200 even during the bear market. I suppose time will tell. We'll keep sort of covering meme coins throughout next year, of course. I think they're here to stay for the short term outlook, but I think the jury's still out over how they go, from 2027 and beyond, for example. So yeah, that was a big surprise, from my point of view. In terms of crypto app of the year, we talked about Polymarket earlier. I think that was a big breakout sort of app for this year, but there were a number of others. And of course, the one that you've got, Nick, I'll hand it over to you here.
Go past pump.fun. So this was a meme coin generator and launcher on Solana. Absolutely huge year. They did insane amount of volumes, attracted a lot of interest. And they were a really big drive, I think, of, Solana, chain overall, broad adoption usage. There's some great figures out there, I think, from Blockworks research, which come out and says that at some points, Pump.fund and a lot of these meme coins do about 80% of total Solana DEX volume, I think, at its height. So this would have tapered back down, I think, to under 50%. But we're just seeing the amount of demand that these meme coins bring to Solana blockchain. That's a core reason, I think, why Solana also performed so well, because a lot of like we saw Ethereum NFTs in 2021 that were all being created and deployed on Ethereum. Now we're seeing a lot of the meme coins that were being created and then deployed and traded on Solana. So huge year for Pump.fun, and I fully anticipate them to do some sort of token launch in 2025. So that's one that, could be in the running for next year too, depending how well or a potential, token launch does go.
Thanks, Nick. The one for me next year, the one from 2024 that I still think has a lot of room to go next year as well, was Kaito. So Kaito. They're just one that just kept growing from strength to strength in this year. What they are essentially is like an analytics platform for I just connecting the dots on terms of just like social trends happening in the crypto space in particular, like what is happening on social media, what are people talking about, what narratives are they talking about, and what profiles are sort of the leader of each narrative. I think that's sort of at the in a short sentence like what it is, but I think they've got plans to be like a lot more than that, going off of what they've sort of launched recently, which is like this Yaps program, which is for people like to earn points from just like, I guess, being themselves on social media. So it's a bit more sophisticated of an algorithm behind how they sort of issue out these Yap points than just your generic sort of easily gamified sort of social game. It's sort of a bit more sophisticated than that from what I've seen. And they've also got their BitTensor subnet, which, Kaito has been running more or less since subnets launched at the end of 2023 for BitTensor. So I'm really just keen to see where they go next, Kaito. And certainly I don't think anyone knew about them this time last year. And all of a sudden they're arguably now like the most heavily referenced, metric platform or data source with respect to just social trends and what narratives people are talking about. So for them to get from nowhere, like no one knowing about them to being the leader in 12 months is quite an achievement. And yeah, keen to see where they go next year as well.
How about when I think we got a final segment here, Matt, and that's most anticipated, I think, cryptocurrency of 2025. So what are you looking for in the market next year? In particular, is there any project you want to shout out for who's in for a big 2025?
Yeah, the one for me, even just, using like sources like Kaito, I think it's no secret that AI is like the leading narrative heading into next year at the moment. And they've had a really strong Q4. The likes of Goatsius, Maximus, and Truth Terminal sort of prompted sort of this most recent AI agent sort of, rally in attention and even developer talent, to be honest. And that was in October, not even 2 months later, 3 months later, it's so much bigger. And I think it's clear that AI 16Z, which is now I would consider to be the largest sort of AI agent project of this new wave, definitely. They are in for a really big year ahead, I think. They've recently sort of done the typical making a new legal entity, like what we spoke about on OpenSea in last week's podcast. I think it's clear that they will, really continue to drive value to their token, which at the moment is sort of seen as basically a meme coin, and that's sort of a ceiling on the price potential of AI 16Z. But more importantly, like why I think it's in for a big year is just because it's only like 6 to 8 weeks old, and it's already like leading the GitHub trending charts globally in all categories, not just for crypto. And that's been going for a month now. Like it's been 1 month and it's still on top of the trending charts. Again, off a low base because it's new, but just seeing the amount of developers, just forking and building on the open source code base of AI 16Z and their Eliza OS software or code base. I just haven't seen anything like this, like enthusiasm for a new project in years. Recency bias perhaps affecting me, but yeah, I'm really excited for what's ahead for AI 16Z and really just the whole AI agent space and that intersection with crypto, heading into next year. But, I know there's a lot of other projects that are showing great promise as well. I know, Nick, which one have you got for 2025?
Mine's maybe a bit more an obvious play here, but it's just Uniswap. So it's almost one that I feel like is almost too obvious that we're going to look back in 2025 at the end of the year and be like, why didn't we see the rise of Uniswap coming? It's a market leader, still retains a high amount of market share, although it was dwindling, but they still have a lot of upcoming catalysts. So they have Unichain, which is their network that they're creating that's built on Ethereum. And I think it's on the OP Optimism stack. That is going to be released sometime in Q1. So they're going to release that public mainnet soon. So that's going to be absolutely huge for Uniswap. And I wonder if that's going to really start a new, I guess, inflow into the chain itself, and whether Uniswap can start to maybe win back some of that market share that it has lost in the past, 12 to 24 months with the rise of Solana and a lot of these, dexes and aggregators on it, such as, Jupiter or Radium. And then I'm also looking forward to V4, of course, which is creating hooks, which essentially just means that it's creating, an ability to build on Uniswap more easily and issue your own kind of products and services on the Uniswap, platform and APIs. So that's going to be absolutely huge because that could create new types of products and services that weren't really possible yet on the previous versions of Uniswap. So we got V4 and we have Unichain, and they're both coming in 2025. And then of course we've got a possibly clearer regulatory environment for some of these DeFi tokens. And don't forget that Uniswap Labs, which is the entity that's building out Uniswap, was issued a Wells notice, from the SEC in mid 2024 saying, hey, we're looking at bringing up an investigation against you and a possible lawsuit. That has yet to have actionables yet. So it looks like potentially with the changing administration in the US that Uniswap Labs could be maybe let off the hook there, if you don't mind the pun. But that would be absolutely huge too, with a clear regulatory environment, V4 and then Unichain. And then if that Wells notice is dropped and an investigation, is then gone, that could set Uniswap up for a really big 2025, let alone any of the other kind of value added utility to the Uni token that is made possible through Unichain. So there could start to be more revenue, more, value distributed to Uni stakers on that chain. So absolutely huge year for Uni, in my opinion.
Yeah, you mount a really strong case there, Nick. There's few projects with that many catalysts or that many major catalysts that I can think of for sure. So yeah, it is right there, like near the top of the charts, but it could be one of those ones we look back on and say, oh, it was staring us right in the face. So keen to see in 12 months time, maybe, like what, how we went with these, with that particular, outlook for Uniswap and AI16Z for myself. But that will, bring us, to a close here. This is, now the final, episode for the year. So thanks everyone for your support, listening on podcast apps or watching on YouTube. So yeah, we really hope you've enjoyed our insights, and we will be having 1 week off at the start of January. We'll be back with our normal scheduling on that week. I think it's Monday the 13th, that week starting there. So yeah, thanks everyone for your support, and hope you have a safe and happy new year. And of course, we always have the newsletter there for anyone wanting extra insight. So collectiveshift.io/newsletter. That's collectiveshift.io/newsletter.